Hi guys, Eternally Optimistic here with a little bit of an announcement. I'm taking a little bit of a hiatus of sorts. Just the way things are going in my personal life right now, I feel like I can't create content quite at the level that I want to. So I'm kind of cutting back. I still do want to put out videos as much as I can. But I've tried to put out 2 videos a month, and I just don't feel like I can do that right now where I am, just the things in my personal life. But I'm going to try to at least put out 1 video a month, and this is not counting vlogs and reviews like the Digimon Try reactions, or if I go see a movie and want to just comment on it. So I guess that brings us right to Kung Fu Panda 3.
Who are you?
I'm Li Shan. I'm looking for my son.
You lost your son?
I've always been a huge fan of the Kung Fu Panda franchise. It was the first film, Kung Fu Panda, the original one, was the first one I thought I was really impressed by from DreamWorks Animation. Because before that, you know, they had largely done stuff like Shark Tale and, these kind of really pop culture heavy, kind of silly movies that were really heavy on the celebrity casting, and they were fun, but not really films that I respected, sad to say. But Kung Fu Panda came out, and it had some of the earmarks of DreamWorks. Like, it's very obviously a parody of Kung Fu Panda, it's very obviously a parody of, you know, old style Kung Fu movies, but it's a parody made with love as opposed to, like, say, Shrek, which was very bitter about its parodying of Disney tropes. Kung Fu Panda was very much a loving send-up to Kung Fu movies, and I got swept up in the story and the animation and the characters, and from then on, you know, I was really impressed with the stuff that DreamWorks was putting out. I loved the sequel. I loved the little short films that they did for Kung Fu Panda, the Secrets of the Furious 5 and the Winter Short. So I was really, really excited that they were going to be making a 3rd movie, and that cliffhanger, you know, that they had off the end of the sequel, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to see the 3rd one. So this film was kind of a disappointment. It's not a bad film. Nothing in this movie is bad. It's just not great. Where the first 2 have been great, this one is just good. It's okay. It follows the Kung Fu Panda formula, and it does everything it does very well. It's just not. I read one review that said it doesn't push the boundaries. Like, the first 2 movies push the boundaries of the story, and computer animated movies has become a world where we expect these movies to push boundaries and do things really different, and you reach higher. And Kung Fu Panda 3 does not do that. So in that respect, it is a little bit of a disappointment, but it's still a fun movie, and I quite enjoyed it. I was really surprised to see Uwe back in this movie. It's not a spoiler, he shows up in the first 5 minutes, because I kind of thought his story was over. You know, I felt like they had wrapped up what happened to him in the first movie, and I felt like, okay, it kind of just needs to let him rest. But, you know, by the end, it felt very natural to have Uguay back in the story, and I felt like his presence really did help the 3rd movie feel like it was wrapping up a trilogy. But then on the other side, we have the introduction of Kai, the new villain, and he is one of the most disappointing parts of this movie. You know, the first 2 villains were incredibly fascinating and deep, but Kai is nowhere near as compelling as Tai Lung, and he's nowhere near as interesting as Lord Shen, which is really a shame, because there is one aspect of his character. His backstory, by the way, is almost completely like Tai Lung's. It's almost exactly what happened with Tai Lung. But there is one aspect of his character that is kind of glossed over by the movie, and it is the most interesting thing about him. It is that nobody knows who he is. Like when he shows up to strike fear in random villagers' homes, he's like, "My name is Kai. You might know me as," and he starts listing off all these names that he's gone by, and the villagers are just kind of like shaking their heads because they don't know him, and he's really upset that his name has kind of been lost to time, and I just felt like that's not a feature we've seen in a lot of animated movies, especially fantasy-based animated movies, where like the villain is well known throughout the land and strikes fear into the hearts of all the people who hear his name, and to see a villain who was really bitter about having been forgotten was really interesting. So it bothered me that they didn't kind of play that up about his character and focus on that a little more often. But Kai is actually not much of a character, and that is I think the biggest overall failure of this movie. But to talk about the good things, because there are a lot of good things in this movie. First of all, it's beautiful. It's a testament to how far computer animation has come. You can definitely see how much it's improved with the visuals, with the texture, with the models. The animation is amazing. The art direction is gorgeous. Like, the scenery is beautiful. And the first two movies were beautiful too, but just everything in this film looks more rich and full and detailed. It continues the tradition of the first two films of putting 2D animated sequences in the film, and I think these are the best. The first two were gorgeous, but the ones in this third movie are especially beautiful and such a treat to watch. If you know anything about the color psychology that they developed for the first film, the production team kind of had they developed their own dictionary, I guess, for using color in the first movie. Green represented wisdom, and anytime you see blue in the film, it represents danger. And it made for some really beautiful visuals in the first movie. Didn't show up as much in the second film, but that color psychology that they used in the first film is all over this third movie, and it's implemented in some really beautiful ways. So that was just one geeky thing, one aspect of the first film that I just loved, and I was so happy to see it brought back to the extent that it was in the third film. And so definitely, if you don't already know, try to watch the commentary for the original film, because that color psychology stuff is really interesting. There are some really amazing fight scenes, just like the first two movies, and they do a lot of different things, from the first two movies with the fighting and the action, and the action is going to be one of the most fun things about this movie, and especially the final battle. I guess, of course, they do some really, really beautiful things and really different things, and that was really refreshing to see. I think that final battle scene was one of my favorite parts of the movie. It's just, I was in awe, like I was blown back, and maybe you won't be, but I just loved what they did and the way they executed the visuals, and the choreography, I guess, of that final battle is really great. So definitely check that out. In terms of good things, Poe is great. Poe is wonderful to watch. He is probably one of my favorite animated characters. I just love his personality, and I love everything that is at the core of his character. He is the ascended fanboy who, loves this kung fu culture and never thought that he'd get a chance to be part of it, and now he's a part of it, and he loves every minute of being a part of it. And I just love that. I love that he's always grateful for the chance to live out his dreams, and he never gets tired of doing it, and the joy on his face is whenever he's fighting with his friends is just infectious. And Jack Black does a wonderful job of voicing his character. He brings so much warmth and love to the role, and I think my favorite thing about him is how humble he is, which makes him a good hero for this series. The overarching theme has always been, to these movies, has always been be yourself. In the first movie, with the whole there is no secret ingredient, it's you. In the second movie, you know, it was all about overcoming your past, and that is the theme that they continue with in the third movie, in a slightly different way. But Jack Black really brings it home, and he, you know, Poe is the heart and soul of these movies, and I could watch him forever, and he's the kind of hero you want to root for, because otherwise, they kind of, I guess I was going to say that the second movie, but I guess it's true the first one as well. Poe is kind of, I guess, infamous at this point for getting Deus Ex Machina powers that always save the day at the end. Like with the whooshy fingerhold in the first movie, how he just figured it out. Like in the second movie, when he catches flaming cannonballs in his bare hands and flings them back at the ships to destroy them, like, that tweaked me a little bit, because I was like, okay, that's a little much. You're suspending my disbelief a little too much. And it happens again in this movie. It's very Deus Ex Machina, the kinds of things that Poe does to save the day. And if it was any other hero, it might be really insufferable. But it's Poe, and he's so humble that every time he gets more power, he doesn't let it go to his head. I guess, which makes him, you know, in biggest contrast to all the villains that are so power hungry, and that's a common theme that all the Kung Fu Panda villains share. I guess all villains, but especially these guys. That Poe is so in awe and so respectful of any power that he receives that, you know, he's going to use it well and for good, and so that makes it a little easier to take when he kind of just, like, unlocks these powers that these masters have trained for, you know, years and years, and they don't achieve. It would be annoying, but it's not as much as it would be. And Poe's character helps soften the blow. So, the biggest failing of this movie is character. Poe's character is explored very well, and we get introduced to his biological father. I was really afraid that, I loved the ending of the second film, when Poe comes back home and tells his father, the goose, that he found the village where he was born, and he came to the conclusion that it didn't matter that Mr. Payne wasn't his biological father, he was his dad, you know, the man who had raised him, and they have that sweet hug, and I thought, what a great message for adoption and adopted, you know, families. It was wonderful, and it filled me with warm fuzzies. So I was worried when Poe's biological father enters this movie that it was going to become this, like, sitcom-y, you know, disfits between Poe's real dad and adopted dad, you know, and there are definitely marks of that in this movie. And I guess it kind of bothered me how quickly Poe embraced his real father, because like, he put that all behind him at the end of the second movie, and in this movie he forgets his goose dad completely and goes off and has fun with his real dad, and it was a little fast for me, but the conclusion that this movie ultimately comes to between Poe's real and adopted fathers is one of the sweetest and most heartfelt things in this movie. And I loved it. And it sort of continued the tradition of celebrating non-traditional families in, with the whole positive adoption message in the end of the second movie. The other thing I was concerned about going in was the little kids that you see all over the advertisements for this movie, like in the posters and whatnot. In terms of sequel fodder, it is worrying when you have all these little kitties and they're like, oh, are they just going to ride out the fact that they've got cute, adorable baby pandas in this movie that don't really do anything? They weren't a problem in the, they were barely in the movie, and when they were there, they were sweet and they were fun to watch. And they didn't. There was I think one scene that was kind of like these baby pandas screwing around that was supposed to be cute that ended up being really annoying. There's only one scene like that, and to be fair, I still think it's one scene too many. But it could have been worse. So I guess that it brings me to the biggest problem, which is that Poe's biological father shows up and decides to bring Poe back to the Panda Village so that he can see where he came from. And that makes sense as a story development. Of course, Poe would want to know where he came from and start to piece together more of who he is. That being, be who you are, being a big theme. But the Panda Village it's filled with characters who are not characters, I guess, to put it away. They're, what can you say about them? There is an effort to give them defining traits, but there's no effort to give them personality. So they end up coming across as gimmicks rather than as characters. There's a panda who likes to hug everybody really tightly, and there's a panda who has really bad teeth. I kid you not, that is like the only defining quality of this panda, is that he has like really bad teeth. And you have panda kids that like kind of play a hacky sack game, and you have this one panda that does ribbon dancing. And seriously, these are the only characteristics that these pandas have, which would be fine, except that the movie focuses way too much on them and consequently pushes aside the more interesting characters that we've gotten throughout the first two movies. Poe is given a very good amount of character development, and the conclusion that this film reaches about his character feels fitting, and it feels like a trilogy being wrapped up in his character. But that's it. Like, Shifu, Tigress, and the rest of the Furious Five are barely in the film. Poe's dad gets resolution, but nobody else does. And it's especially disappointing that the five are barely in this movie. They get to be in the action scenes, and they get, like, every once in a while Seth Rogen or David Cross will be given a funny line, but that's it. It's especially disappointing when it comes to Tigress, because, we saw seeds of her character being planted in the second movie. Especially, like, I'm thinking of the scene where, she and Poe are talking on the boat, and Poe says, I'm like you, right? I don't feel anything. And she gets this really, like, saddened look on her face that's almost like, is that how you see me? And I desperately wanted that to be explored in the third movie, but nope, there is absolutely nothing new that we learn about her character. And she has a new outfit, which really baffled me. Like, so far, every time someone gets a new outfit, it's because they've undergone a character change. Like Shifu got his new green robes because he had, found inner peace and he was on the way to enlightenment. I'm looking at this dress that Tigress is wearing and wondering, what did she do to kind of like, what new skill did she master to be wearing this new outfit? But no, it's almost like she's like, we didn't spend any time developing Tigress's character, so have a pretty dress instead. And she goes to the Panda Village and she meets this cute little panda cub who falls in love with her, and she ends up becoming really attached to this little panda, and like kind of takes her under her wing and becomes her guide and her mentor. And I could have sworn they also did this in an episode of the TV show, where where Tigress is being followed around by a little tyke who she really is annoyed by, but then falls in love with. Did they do that in the TV show? I could have sworn they did. Which, the TV show has its own flaws, but it's really sad. It's really sad that they didn't do more with the characters. All of the Furious Five and Shifu, but especially Tigress. And in that respect, it doesn't feel like the end of a trilogy. It feels like I still have questions that I want to know. Like, does Shifu, there are questions brought up with his character. Like, does he master chi? Does he, what is his place in the end of the story? And what are the five going to do? And what about Tigress and this new, like, panda cub that she's fallen in love with? And I want to know what happens to these characters. Like, the point of a trilogy is wrapping up what's going to happen to your favorite characters that you've fallen in love so much. We got an answer for Poe, sort of. It was a good answer. It didn't feel like a very complete one, but that's it. And that's really disappointing. I would almost like to have them do a fourth movie just to make up for that and focus entirely on the five and Poe and Shifu and what's going to happen to them. Because the Panda Village was not nearly compelling enough to justify seeing so much of them. And I hate to say that, but I guess to end this review on a good note, I've always loved the lessons in the Kung Fu Panda franchise. I mentioned, you be yourself is a big message of the films, and that's certainly in here. But it also says some things about family and about how you go about discovering who you are, and that are very nice and definitely good for kids to hear, but also nice for adults. It's in terms of entertainment for the whole family. This one is a lot simpler, and it's disappointing that way, especially when you compare it to the first two. But I did love the messages in this movie just as much as the first two, and I'm glad that this film exists. And for the most part, I did enjoy it. It's just for the characters, I'm very, very disappointed in the lack of character development. There you go. I would love to hear what you thought of the film and how you think of anything that I said, or what you would have liked to have seen, or anything that you really loved about this movie. So definitely leave a comment and let me know. Until next time, I'm eternally optimistic. Thanks for watching.